So, you're an athlete looking to get a leg up on the competition. What if I told you you could double the practice of your sport without putting any wear and tear on your body? Sounds like you'd get better, right? Well, with proper mental imagery, you can do just that. Now, mental imagery is not just visualization and is definitely not just daydreaming. It is a specific and deliberate practice that utilizes all the senses to create an experience that mimics the real thing. Now, I'm a baseball pitcher. So, for example, this would mean seeing the catcher, the batter, the stadium, and making those images big and bright. Can you feel the clay underneath your cleats or the sweat rolling down your face? What are you wearing? Can you hear your coach, the crowd, the voice in your head? What about the smell of the fresh cut grass? Even try and taste the gum in your mouth. Now, through cultivating these senses and internally experiencing your performance, you make the imagery practice as game like as possible. And that's when you see the benefit in game. But how does it work? So, put simply, your brain can't tell the difference between image skills and actual performance. Regions of the brain in charge of motor movements and imaging those movements overlap. So, imagery activates these motor areas, simulating physical practice. The more these movement patterns get ingrained, the neural connections strengthen, improving skills and performance. So there's also been studies that show participants who use imagery to do a bicep curl actually activate the muscle cells in the bicep. And if asked to image lifting more weight, more muscle cells get activated. Now that's crazy stuff in my opinion, and taken together helps us understand what we might call muscle memory. Finally is confidence. As game situations become more familiar through imagery, you'll feel more comfortable in whatever situation you find yourself in and be able to perform at your potential. So now let's get into the mechanics of imagery. Chris Archer makes millions and millions of dollars pitching, so maybe we can learn a thing from him. He says, I just close my eyes and go through all the hitters. Not really specifically the hitters, I do a third person point of view, so I see myself executing a pitch. And I also see myself from a first person view, where I'm actually inside my own body, doing it and feeling it. So I see myself do it, then I actually do it. So our friend Chris mentioned first person point of view, which is an internal perspective. That's using your mind's eye to recreate a game scenario from your perspective and is shown to have more carryover effect to games because it's more game like. With this approach, you actually see the game in front of you and put yourself in your own shoes. Now, using a third person bird's eye view perspective is still important and especially helpful to focus on your form because you can give yourself a 360-degree view of your body from any angle. And that allows you to see yourself in time and space and train what you might be working on in practice. So, the goal is to make your imagery practice as real life as possible. So, the acronym PETLAP is useful in making sure you cover all your bases to have the best imagery practice possible. The first is physical. This literally means doing imagery in your full jersey. Now, obviously, this isn't always realistic, but I like to wear my glove and hat and hold a ball because it makes me feel more focused for the 10 minutes or so that I practice. Second is environment. To make your imagery have the most carryover to games, you would do it in the batter's box or on the mound. Now, obviously, this isn't always realistic, so at least use all your senses to put yourself there in your mind. The task variable is the most obvious. If you're a pitcher, image yourself pitching, not playing center field. The next variable is timing. Research shows that the closer to game speed you do imagery, the better the carryover to games. But slow motion is still an important tool, especially when learning a new skill. I use slow motion imagery to see the ball come off my fingers with my changeup grip when I was tweaking that pitch, and it definitely helped. Learning is simple and means as you improve, your imagery practice parallels your new skills. Next is emotion, and I think this is a largely overlooked variable that helped me the most. We only experience game like emotions in games and almost never practice it. So, in an imagery practice, if you know you'll feel nervous before a big game, recreate those emotions. Then you'll feel more comfortable when those feelings do inevitably come up in games. Lastly, is perspective. And this is what Chris Archer taught us about a first person and third person point of view. I recommend playing around with both and seeing what works the best for you. Now, in that spirit, I recommend playing around with all the different variables. Both Barry Bonds and David Ortiz here are using a third person perspective, but Bonds is using multiple angles where Big Poppy might be working on staying in his back hip, so wants to see himself in slow motion. But I say play around with everything and make your imagery practice personal. Put yourself in tough situations. If you struggle against big lefties with wipeout sliders, put yourself in the box against them. In addition to practicing skills and preparing for a game, it can be helpful to use your imagery to recreate great performances you've had in the past to build confidence. So, what can you do? Imagery is a skill, so like anything else, it can be trained. As you get better, you will see more carryover into games. You can also use imagery pre-game or pre-pitch, and it's shown this primes your neural circuits to fire, much like warming up the body prepares it to move well. You could also write and record yourself a script that walks yourself through an inning or an at bat. Please reach out to me if that is something you want some help on, because I can totally help you out. Here, I give an example from Michael Lorenzen on the Reds. He starts by laying on his back and taking deep breaths to settle in, and then gathers up all of his senses. He uses an internal perspective and makes sure he hears the voice in his head as accurately as possible. For him, it changes based on the pitch he throws. Then he sees the catcher's sign, visualizes the shape of his pitch, then starts his motion and sees a successful outcome. Start with just a batter and build up from there. Challenge yourself to stay focused. It definitely will not be easy at first. But like anything, the most important point is to make imagery a practice. There's a ton of benefit in just a couple minutes a day. So I'll finish by asking you, why not start today?